Hello there guys, how are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and first and foremost, happy Halloween, because the day this video is going live is of course Halloween Day, the best day of the year. Now the only other thing I want to quickly mention before we jump into the actual fun video game stuff is you're watching this on Halloween, October 31st, but I'm actually recording this video on October 30th, which happens to be the 10-year anniversary of the very first video I ever uploaded to this channel. Yes, that's right, it was October 30th, 2013 that I first ever made a video. Even before I titled the channel Rule of Two Review, I probably made a handful of videos. I have no idea, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 10 videos under a different name before I eventually decided to call it Rule of Two Review. And I just thought it would be a lot of fun for me to get on camera and do that. I'm feeling very nostalgic and misty-eyed about it. I have very fond memories of my time starting off as a small YouTuber who felt great about every 1 subscriber he would get and every 5 people that would choose to watch a video. Very fun time. The Wii U was not yet a year old. The PS4 and the Xbox One were weeks away from launching. That's when I started this channel at that time. Wii U was brand new. PS4 and Xbox One weren't even out yet. It was such a fun time. And so anyway, I just wanted to share that. It's the 10-year anniversary of this channel. Thank you guys for supporting me so far. And with that out of the way, let's get into the good stuff. So naturally, as I've slowed down the cadence of uploads on Rule of Two Review the past couple of months, I am certainly a few days late to this story, but I still wanted to talk about it because it's very interesting and very cool, even though we don't really know how much it actually means. Now, what we're talking about is a report that, as far as I can tell, started from Game Rant, where apparently they noticed a patent filed by Nintendo, the typical kind of patents we see that have all sorts of really interesting and enlightening diagrams showing crazy technology or pieces of hardware or controllers and all sorts of things we've seen throughout the years. And this newest one is the first one I've seen in probably several years that actually is very interesting. And again, it does have a lot of people talking. Whether or not it actually means anything, no one is really sure, but again, it does have people talking, and even I looked at this and said, yo, this is pretty cool, I have to talk about this. This patent seems to show some kind of what could either be a new controller for some kind of Nintendo home console device, or it could be a completely separate, brand new handheld-only device. It is fascinating. So looking at a few of these patent pictures here, you can see it's essentially a clamshell design kind of device that does have screens on it, and yes, we all can agree it looks just like a 3DS or a Nintendo DS, right? However, it appears that when this thing would close, there's also a screen on the back side of the top side of the clamshell. So basically, you know, what we can sort of glean from just these 2 patent drawings of something that might not ever turn out to be anything. Let's not forget that. We don't even know that this ever becomes produced or if it means anything right now. But looking at this thing, it's like when you open it, it basically is like a DS or a 3DS. It's like a dual screen little handheld device. Whether it's a controller or its own thing, we don't know. When you close it, the screen on the back of the top lid, in theory, would become another screen that you're now playing and holding in a completely different way with a closed device, as if you had closed a 3DS. So I don't know, man. I'm just gonna speak for myself here, and when I see this thing, it gets me very excited. And the main reason it gets me very excited, and I know that not a lot of people might agree with this, and that's okay. Everyone had very strong opinions about this over the past 10 years or so, but for me, I'm a huge fan of the dual screen gaming concept, meaning 2 screens that can work at the exact same time and give you different views or different elements of gameplay operating again at the same time. That is what the 3DS and the Wii U did that is different than the Nintendo Switch, or even the PlayStation Portal thing, right? Where it's like, you can play on your TV or you can pick up that controller and play in your hand, right? Like one of the ways you could play Wii U titles. The difference is you could have one screen doing something like a map or an inventory, a very common use in those old consoles, or it could be a secondary view of the gameplay, like how Star Fox Zero did it, for example, on the Wii U, and then your screen that would be on the TV or the top screen while you're holding it in your hand is another screen of gameplay or screen of the action showing something else. The fact that you could have 2 screens operating in tandem at the same time was the coolest thing to me. Loved it on the 3DS and the DS, and I really loved it on the Wii U when it was taken advantage of. And so, to bring it back to these patent pictures, we're basically seeing a device in patent form that seems to be offering the same thing. Now, in reading through the article about what Game Rant says, apparently one or all of these screens might be touchscreens, so of course it's playing a little bit more in that DS and that Wii U space, where you have two screens operating at the same time, and one of them would be a touchscreen, so that certainly would be very cool. And also, they touch on this concept that the two clamshell closing devices, in theory, could maybe be separated. So that, similar to the way you can pull off your two Joy-Cons and have two people play holding one Joy-Con apiece, in theory, maybe this device is also designed in the same way, where they could be pulled apart, and because each one has its own screen, two different people could be holding one half of this thing and have their own buttons and screen in their hand, the same way the Joy-Cons operate. So, man, it's a lot. You look at these things, you hear the way it's described, you think of the possibilities, you compare it to the DSs and the Wii U's of the world, and you're like, there's 100,000 different, well, maybe not 100,000, but there's just so many different ways to approach playing a game in a world where any or all of these things about these patent drawings were true. So let's bring it back to reality for a minute, and I'll double down on what I've already said a few times. There's no reason to think that these are for sure going to turn into some kind of product. Nintendo, just like every other gaming company, files tons of patents all the time, and sometimes we see them ahead of time and they turn into nothing. Or it's something that they file for and they just never use, or they sit on it for years upon years. So there's no direct indication to let us know that this is part of what the Switch 2 is going to be, like a controller for the Switch 2 or even the Switch 2 itself. But it is certainly interesting. Maybe it's something they plan to sit on for several years or even another console generation before they do anything with it. But I just want to point out that we don't know enough to say that this is going to be something. I just think it's very interesting. It is a real patent, and so clearly it's some sort of glimpse or window into how Nintendo is thinking and what kind of ideas they're thinking about or maybe even sitting on for the future. But of course, I'm going to be honest with you guys and also come back to the other thing I said, which is that this gets me excited, and I would love to see a world where maybe this was something that they were going to release in the near future. Apparently, this thing isn't meant to hook up to a TV, so that muddles the waters a little bit more. If I could pick my perfect next Nintendo console, I want it to be similar to the Wii U, only better. I want it to be able to be played on a TV with a second screen in my hand, with semi-normal controls and buttons, but also with a screen and a touch screen and all of that stuff, and take the Wii U concept and take it to the next level. That would be so exciting to me. I think that dual screen gaming is one of the best innovations the gaming industry ever had, and it had a pretty decent run for almost a decade. I guess around a decade, you could say, between the introduction of the first DS model to the Wii U and the ending of the Wii U in 2016. That was a great time, man. There were so many phenomenal games released across both platforms. I don't care what anyone says about the Wii U. Tons of great games on that thing. And so I would love to see it reintroduced to the world in some way. I would love to see Nintendo do that. If I'm being honest, though, I don't know that I see them doing it simply because, yes, it started off strong with the DS and the 3DS, but obviously the Wii U failing, even though there's other reasons why it failed. It wasn't just like the gamepad or anything, but the fact that it did fail probably did put a sour taste in their mouth and probably the whole industry's mouth. I don't know how many other people would be as open to dual screen gaming as I am. I think that sadly, and again, I'm going to emphasize the sadly. I think most gamers are missing out on this, but sadly, I think that the market for people who like it the way I do is very small. Most people probably don't care or never cared. It's why they didn't buy a Wii U. They didn't trust and understand why it was a cool concept. And even though Nintendo made some mistakes with it, I still think more people should have given it a shot and spent time with it than they did, but they didn't. So what incentive would Nintendo have, or any company, to try to do it again? It's not impossible that they revisit it, and I certainly hope that this is an indicator that they will in the future, even if it is for the Switch 2. I mean, oh my God, give it to me. But I just, I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, man. I don't know that we can say that this is what they would do. But boy, would I love to frickin' see it. So we're playing the game of wait and see. What's going to happen with this patent? Will something happen with it? Will nothing happen with it? Is it going to be something they sit on for the next 10 to 15 years? Or is this a direct indication of some kind of concept, whether it's exactly this or an amalgamation of this, something that is meant to be a part of the Switch 2. Again, I really doubt it, but I also really want it, right? I have two parts of my brain that are at conflict with each other. One knows it's probably not going to happen, while the other one says, please make it happen, because I think it would be so cool. And last point I'll say here, there is a chance that Nintendo has earned enough goodwill with people and with gamers and Nintendo fans because of the Nintendo Switch era, that if they did reintroduce a well-executed concept like what this device is showing, that is a dual screen experience in some way, that people would be way more willing to give them another chance and see what it's like, especially if the power and the graphics of the console really delivers as well, so that people feels like it's tech that's kind of keeping pace with where the industry is, but also has this cool second screen thing going on. It could be amazing, you know? I mean, it's worth noting this thing also kind of looks like an old, remember like the cell phones like 10 years ago that kind of did this thing where they flipped open in a certain way? I never really had a flip phone or those little slidey open Raspberry phones. I never had one, but there was a period for many years where they were common. It almost looks like that, like the old Sony Ericsson phones, I think was one of those. So maybe this is a way to show that it would almost be like your smartphone integrating with the console as opposed to a device, you know, like a controller or something. I don't know. I'm just spitballing at this point. It's really tough to say. I just wanted to point out what this thing is, share my thoughts, the fact that I love it. I want to see it happen very soon. What do you guys think? Do you like this design, or do you hate this idea with every fiber of your being? Share what you think below, and that's about it.